What if one of the biggest business opportunities in the world is hiding in plain sight? When most people think about global investment, they usually focus on the United States, Europe, or maybe China. But there is another country that keeps appearing in global supply chains, agriculture, energy, commodities, infrastructure, and consumer markets. That country is Brazil, and despite its size, natural resources, and economic relevance, many foreign investors and entrepreneurs still don't fully understand how big the opportunity really is. In this video, we'll explore why Brazil may be one of the most overlooked business opportunities in the world, what makes the country attractive, which sectors stand out the most, and what every foreign investor should understand before looking at this market. Brazil is not a small niche economy, all right? It is one of the largest countries in the world by territory, population, and economic relevance. It has more than 200 million people, massive agricultural production, enormous mineral wealth, a strong domestic market, and a strategic role in global food and energy supply. But what makes Brazil really interesting is this combination: scale, resources, internal demand, and still a lot of inefficiency. And wherever there is inefficiency, there is usually opportunity. That does not mean Brazil is simple. It isn't. But for investors and entrepreneurs who understand how to identify value in emerging markets, Brazil can be a very compelling case. Let's start with the big picture. Brazil is often described as a country of potential, and while that phrase has become repetitive, the truth is that Brazil continues to be relevant for very practical reasons. First, Brazil is a global powerhouse in agriculture. It plays a critical role in products like soybeans, coffee, corn, beef, chicken, sugar, and orange juice. In a world increasingly concerned about food security, supply chains, land use, and commodity production, Brazil matters a lot. Second, Brazil is rich in natural resources. The country has important reserves of iron ore, oil, natural gas, and other strategic resources that keep it deeply connected to global markets. Third, Brazil has scale. A very large domestic population means companies are not relying only on exports. There is internal consumption, urban expansion, digital adoption, financial services growth, logistics demand, and a huge need for productivity improvements. And fourth, Brazil still has many sectors that are under-optimized. This is important. In very mature markets, growth often comes from marginal improvements. In Brazil, in many sectors, there is still room for major efficiency gains, modernization, digitization, and better management. That creates space for entrepreneurship and investment. One of the most interesting things about emerging markets is that opportunity often comes from solving basic problems at scale, and Brazil has many of those. In logistics, there are transportation bottlenecks, long distances, and high operating costs. In agriculture, there is huge sophistication in some segments, but also plenty of room for better management, data systems, traceability, mechanization, and financial tools. In real estate and infrastructure, there are large regional differences, uneven development, and demand for better services. In small and medium businesses, there is often strong market demand, but operational inefficiency, weak systems, and limited professionalization. For a foreign audience, this is very important to understand. Brazil is not attractive because everything is easy. Brazil is attractive because the market is large, valuable, and still full of problems worth solving. That is exactly where many of the best businesses are born. If there is one sector where Brazil stands out globally, it is agribusiness. Brazil is not just a big agricultural producer, it is one of the central pillars of global food production. That creates opportunities far beyond farming itself. There are opportunities in farm management software, logistics, processing, storage, exports, equipment, inputs, irrigation, waste reuse, premium food products, traceability systems, and agricultural finance. In other words, the opportunity is not only in owning land, it is also in building the tools, systems, and services around one of the largest productive ecosystems in the world. And this is exactly why agribusiness in Brazil attracts attention, not only from traditional investors, but also from technology companies, operators, exporters, and private equity. Another major area is energy and natural resources. Brazil has one of the most interesting energy profiles among large economies. It combines oil and gas relevance with strong renewable potential, especially in hydro, solar, wind, and bioenergy. That creates opportunities not just in extraction, but also in infrastructure, industrial services, energy distribution, equipment, and projects linked to long-term demand growth. Global investors often look for markets where resources, scale, and future demand meet. Brazil is one of those places. Now let's talk about a less obvious opportunity: digital transformation. Brazil has a very large consumer market and strong digital adoption in many areas, but at the same time, countless businesses still operate with poor systems, manual processes, fragmented controls, and weak integration. This is especially true in traditional industries, so while international audiences sometimes imagine opportunity only in commodities and infrastructure, there is also a major opportunity in software, fintech, B2B tools, operational systems, education platforms, and business services. Any company that helps Brazilian businesses become more efficient can be entering a very large and underserved market. Of course, none of this means Brazil is risk-free. It is not. Brazil can be complex. There are tax challenges, bureaucracy, legal layers, regional differences, infrastructure limitations, and currency volatility. Politics can also affect confidence and long-term planning. And this is why Brazil is not a market for lazy analysis. It is a market for serious operators. Foreign investors who approach Brazil with superficial assumptions often get frustrated, but those who understand local execution, partnerships, regulation, and cost structures may find very attractive opportunities. So the key idea here is balance. Brazil is not a miracle market, but it is also not a market that should be ignored. Many foreign investors overlook Brazil for a simple reason. They see headlines, but they don't see operations. They hear about politics, inflation, or volatility, and they stop there. But experienced investors know that headlines are not the same as reality on the ground. A market can be messy and still extremely profitable. In fact, many of the best opportunities in the world exist precisely in places where complexity prevents the average person from entering. That complexity acts like a barrier, and barriers often protect opportunity. So, is Brazil one of the best business opportunities in the world? For the right investor or entrepreneur, it absolutely can be, not because it is easy, not because it is perfect, but because it combines scale, resources, internal demand, strategic global relevance, and a massive need for more efficient businesses and systems. That is a powerful combination. And in the coming years, as food, energy, logistics, and emerging market exposure become even more important globally, Brazil may become harder and harder to ignore. If you want to understand real business opportunities in Brazil and other emerging markets, subscribe to the channel. This is Next Market Insights, and in the next videos, we'll break down real sectors, business models, and investment opportunities with a practical perspective. Thank you for watching. More insights coming soon. See you in the next video.